Welcome to Parenting Vanessa Clone's podcast. All right, it's a little bit about me. I'm a family interventionist. I have started this school, a nonprofit that is a K through 8, which specializes in social emotional learning, which is KFS school, along with the 3R method that works on self-regulation and body awareness, along with the social emotional learning that builds on the relationships of the child and whoever they're working with, parent or teacher. And I just have a lot to offer when it comes to interventions with kids of all ages. And it's really important for me that people have more tools in a toolkit when it comes to parenting. Welcome this Saturday morning. We have one of my, I always say my good friend. This is actually real. One of my best friends, Carrie Johnson, who's a marriage and family therapist. Hello, Carrie.
Hi, how are you, Vanessa?
I'm doing well. So we went to dinner this last week.
We did.
Yeah, it was actually really good. We went to the Rustic. What was it? The Rustic?
Yeah, the Rustic.
And so a couple of things came up, and I just wanted to talk about it, that we're just actually not anything against anyone's skill level, because you did start the conversation with, I just wasn't sure. What did you start it with? And what came up for you?
Yeah, I don't remember, but I do know that there are certain things as a therapist that I need to collaborate about. There's things I don't know about. And because you have so much experience with your own school, and especially with kiddos who have been diagnosed with autism, yeah, I wanted to get your perspective about a new client that I have. Who I'm trying to get to know and figure out what the best way to intervene is with them.
Right. And I think that this has come up a lot because consultations, that comes up because people have questions. But what you said was very striking for me, in the sense of, like, the question was like, what happens when something happens at school or at home, and then they come to the therapy office and they don't want to talk.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I definitely get that a lot. Where there's this, like, I guess, hope or vision that the kiddo's going to come in and process the whole thing, and they're going to walk out saying to their family or saying to their school, like, I know what I'm going to do differently next time. But, and this is I know this is a big part of your philosophy, like, they don't want to reprocess something that was really challenging for them. And they kind of want to, like, leave it either at school or at home. And so, yeah, that was kind of what I was asking you about, because I know that that's something you think about a lot.
Yeah. For me, I think a lot of times kids, we talked about this before, like in the past, like kids, when they do something, there's so much shame afterwards, right? And I
Totally.
think there's certain kids that have a sensitive, I call my little angels, because they're so freaking sensitive.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the level of 1 to 10 of, like, how sensitive they are and how much shame they feel afterwards is at like a 12.
Yeah.
And then to go back and to redo it, the whole thing again. And then also I want to talk about how, sometimes parents don't even realize, like, their own stuff. So it's like parents aren't even processing it. And then we have all
Yeah.
this pressure on kids to be like, okay, well, okay, I called Vanessa, something came up. And they're like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't see the need. And honestly,
Yeah.
sometimes, and the question is, and I don't know what you think on this. The question is, if they're saying, okay, I don't want to talk about it, I mean, I'm not going to push.
Right.
So,
Yeah. I'm not going to push either. I think also what is coming up for me is, like, a kid, obviously, when they're having a big outburst or a big behavioral incident, or, they called you a name or whatever, like, they're not really in their mind. They're not really in their bodies at that time. And then when they're with us afterwards, they're feeling regulated again. So it's probably like we're asking them to access something that was, like, really challenging already. Like you said, there's shame involved. Like you said, I don't want to then be the, like, um I don't know what you would call it, like the punisher, the disciplinarian, or the one who says, like, you have to talk about this, otherwise that's all we can do today. So it's definitely a challenge, and I think it's probably important, um especially for families to know that there's a lot more going on in therapy than just like processing the bad things that have happened.
Right.
Um,
And you also have to have the relationship. So it might just
exactly.
be right. For me, when I'm doing my consultations, it's like I might go in really hard one day, and then for 3 more sessions after that, I'm going in light. Or I'm
Yeah.
going to do something fun. I'm going to go in very difficult. And I also, my intervention, so I don't know if we've talked about this before, but my interventions, when I do something, it's like 10 minutes. Right.
Hmm.
It's not like a whole hour. I think that's too long for kids. And so it's
Totally.
a solid 10 minutes, and then I switch gears.
Yeah, for
Right.
sure.
And then, but I guess the another question I have is like, all right, well, the therapists are not there at school.
Right.
So when these things happen, I think it comes down to the community, right? It comes down to the
Hmm.
teachers, it comes down to administration, it comes down to like, how do we help support them? So I think this would be a great opportunity right now is to talk about how what teachers can do when they're
Yeah.
in that place. Because I also think a lot of times, we as teachers, because I'm a teacher too, I have multiple
Sure.
hats. Whatever I am, I don't know. I could be like,
Yeah, all the things. Yeah.
I'm like, I'm cleaning the toilet one day, then I'm doing intervention there, then I'm doing, HR, and then I'm
Yeah,
breaking up a fight.
for sure.
That's what hat I'm wearing that day. But like, what are some things that, how to help teachers and especially parents, like not take it personally, but also
Hmm.
understand that, okay, as you said earlier, they're not in their body.
Right. Yeah. That's the thing that's hard, I think, is like when what as a teacher or as a parent, you see, well, especially as a teacher, like you're juggling a whole class, you have one kid who's like appears to be acting out, appears to be not following the rules, appears to be, doing the thing they've been asked not to do, et cetera. And I think it can be really hard for teachers. Like I really admire what teachers do when they're juggling a whole classroom. And I think like what you said makes so much sense. Like needing to be regulated as a teacher first, needing to know it's not personal, needing to know it's not about the teacher not doing a good job, but it's just about the kid struggling in that moment. They're dysregulated. It could be anxiety, it could be sensory overload, it could be shame. Like if they're struggling with something and they wish they knew how to do it, but it's taking them a long time and they're looking around comparing themselves to others. There's so many different things that could come up for kids in the classroom. And it's none of that is the teacher's fault. So I think if a teacher can sort of reduce demands in that moment and just refocus on keeping like their own calm, regulated environment in themselves, and then trying to help the kid get back to a place where they're back in their minds and they're back in their bodies. Like it's hard. I think the goal is less about compliance, like you need to sit down right now, and more about, okay, what could be happening beneath this behavior. And
Right.
and when a teacher can like think about that and know that, then they might be able to better access interventions that are not shaming or punitive or disciplinarian type.
Right. Well, one thing that I do that I've done with kids in the past is have a self-regulation folder. So like coloring, right? Or
Yeah,
drawing or something that, first you have to know the child and ask them what's going to help them to calm down. Because I do think
totally.
I've had people come into the school and like, oh, they're coloring and well, they're still listening.
Yeah, yeah.
They don't need to look up. They don't need, I mean, that's the other thing. I think that we expect kids to be a certain way and do things in class.
Hmm.
But I'll tell you right now, if I'm looking at a teacher in class, I'm not getting the information. I know
Totally.
me. So
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah,
tuning them out, right?
yeah,
But,
yeah.
but like if you can have, and then are they allowed to listen to music?
Are they allowed to have a fidget? Are they allowed to put headphones in if there's like, if they get sensory overload? Like, I think I hope, and especially in San Francisco, that like we're moving to a more like neurodiversity affirming education model. I know this is what your school is doing, right? Like
Right.
you allow kids to access the things that they need to stay regulated. And that's why you're seeing good results. You know, I think a lot of schools are maybe not able to do that, or they don't have the resources to do it, or they're just not able to wrap their minds around that philosophy. But ultimately, if a kid is really disruptive and dysregulated, like that is impacting the learning environment, you know? So
Right.
being able to build something in like a body break, a fidget, a headphones, you know, like actually feels worthwhile to the rest of the learning environment. And hopefully, you know, that can start to make more and more sense in the school environment.
And one thing that I think people don't understand is that a lot of kids, they don't want to know that they don't want to show that they don't know. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? Like, so
Uh,
for example, if they're in a classroom and something comes up and like they don't know how to ask for help or they don't know on there. And I've had kids like in the middle of the year that I've gone to do consultations and I go, well, where is a calming area in their classroom? Oh, we don't have one. I'm like, wait a minute, you don't have one. And I go in and it's right there. Right. But if you have kids that are like, if they're so overwhelmed in the classroom that they're not getting certain knowledge, right? Or like it's not coming up for them. Oh, I could just go to this area.
hmm.
But it's almost like, well, no one's going to that area.
Right. Or it
Right.
seems like you'll be set apart if you use this area, like, oh,
Right.
suddenly something's wrong with you. Yeah. Yeah.
So I always felt, especially as we're at the beginning of the year, is like having teachers like just have people rotate in and out of the calming area just to go and look.
I
Like
like
if you're
that.
doing reading, go feel the calming area and go there and see what you need. You know, another simple strategy is a break card, right? And just put break on every desk. And if you need a
Hmm.
break, then you could that's your exit out, right?
Hmm.
I'm gonna put this break up there and you could go to the certain area. Or if you need to do so, like depending on how much support you have in the classroom, but I don't think there's a lot of support right now in San Francisco with all the budgets and stuff.
Right. Right.
That's that other issue. But so like ways that, would be really helpful are like, the coloring, seeing if there's music, you're looking
Hmm.
at the headphones. Um, Plus on top of it, I like how you said doing body breaks. I mean, Go Noodle,
Hmm.
another resource that I love to do. And then there's also cosmic yoga on YouTube.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah.
And
That's
they have
great.
and they have all the social emotional learning. You would think I would be doing more yoga. I mean, I do yoga with the kids sometimes, but they don't want to
Yeah.
listen to me. Because I do have that yoga program I do teach, but I think by the end of like the kid, it's better when there's like a little bit more distance between us and me and the kids, like emotionally.
Yeah.
I'm very close.
Yeah. You are. It's true. It's true.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then,
But they use you as regulation, and not
yeah,
all kids can do that with their teachers, you know.
no,
So
100. Yeah, I think last week I did schoolwork in the car twice.
yeah.
Because we just need to go on a drive driving for forever. And then it was funny. I hand the kid a pen and he's like, "Oh, look, it's not sharpened." And I'm all, "Oh no, I don't have to do work." I'm giving
uh,
myself a pen in the back seat.
yeah, for sure. That's
Like,
good. Yeah. Yeah.
and some kids just need that one-on-one time too. And like even if it's lunchtime, even if it's like a couple minutes, just know that they're gonna have that.
Now a sponsor from KFS School.
One more time.
Now a sponsor from KFS School.
KFS School is a nonprofit located in San Francisco that has a strong emphasis on individualized social emotional learning curriculum that was created by Vanessa and has been adopted by countless schools across the Bay Area and more. With an emphasis on small classroom settings, one-on-one attention, and a warm and welcoming environment, KFS encourages your child's ability to make choices, problem solve, master skills, and develop their relationships further. Find out more at kfsschool.org today. That's kfsschool.org.
About it, saying, okay, well, when things come up, like what can we do? And it's like doing that role play, right? So it's
Totally.
like actually practicing it, what you want them to do. I also feel like kids know what to say. So that's why the role play, it's like, well, what do you do when you get upset? Well, I need to take a break. I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this. And they give you a whole list. And then when it happens, they're like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. But I think that's, sometimes that is like the repetition needed, or the brainstorming, or the like, we're drawing things, we're making lists, and then it's hard. It's like, yeah, I know that it's not going to be able to be integrated and implemented right away or every single time, but like that's okay. They hopefully will be able to access those skills at some point, but
Yeah.
it takes time,
Yeah, and
yeah.
especially if you have like kids are impulsive, right? And
Hmm.
then the
Hmm.
language that I always say, like to parents that are like, okay, well, my kid is always doing things, and I'm getting really frustrated, and I just want them to stop. It's like, well, look at the language you're doing, right? It's
Yeah.
like, when you drop them off, a lot of parents say, okay, we're not going to hit today. We're not going to
Hmm.
do this. Are you going to listen to the teacher? What does that mean exactly? Are you going to be
Yeah.
kind? Well, what does that mean? Right. So I think
Yeah.
with some kids, we have to be extremely specific, right? Or you could just say, can we try to make some good choices?
Yeah.
Because
Choices, I think, is helpful. Yeah.
yeah, so that's what I'm saying. You have to change the language to something positive where the kid feels like, oh, look, I did do like two good choices, but I exploded a little bit later. So that's still
Hmm.
positive.
Right. Exactly.
It's all
Yeah.
perception, right?
Yeah. And I think it's sometimes important for parents to realize that outbursts or blowing up, it's not always a choice.
Yeah.
Like, kids are not always able to pause and think and then suddenly be like, I'm gonna, you know, throw this book around. Like sometimes it's just a matter of being, again, like I said earlier, like being overwhelmed in their bodies and needing to discharge some energy, and that's what comes out. So sometimes our goal, and I know your goal, is to try to help like keep them regulated and help them recognize the signals before they're at a 10, when they're starting to get anxious or when they're starting to get overwhelmed or there's some sensory thing, because that's when they can actually like pause and think and maybe make a different choice. But when they're all the way up at that, big blow up point, it's really hard to like steer in a different direction.
No, you're going through it. I
Yeah, exactly.
I remember this was years ago, this kid, and he would always like hit his friends, right? That was like
Yeah.
one of the things, and he just felt so bad afterwards. He was like, I just can't
Mm-hmm.
control it. But sometimes it would be like if there was an item in his hand and like he would just throw it and it would hit. But after like months, I remember he like picked up a chair and threw in the opposite direction, right?
Right.
Of the peers. And I was like so proud of him. And then
Yeah.
parents were like, he still picked up a chair. And the school said they still and threw it. I go, but he made a choice to go away
Yeah.
from people.
Different. Yeah. Right. Like he still felt like he needed that discharge of energy, but that
Yeah, and
was
he
a
did it
choice to not
away.
do it towards anybody.
I'm
Totally.
gonna
Totally.
I'm gonna celebrate that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So
Yeah. And some
again,
some kids do need that. Like that's why we say like give them some opportunities to like, get out some physical energy, but in a safe way.
right. I mean, yeah, the chair was still a thing, but like it was just I wanted to talk about like the perception because it's like you can hear things, right? And then you're like, well,
Mhm.
maybe they made a good choice a little bit earlier in the day. And like
Totally.
that's what you want to celebrate.
Totally.
Right?
Definitely.
Because if it's
Yeah.
always like negative, 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 like why are you doing this? And this is the other thing when we talk about, and this is why after the behavior happens at school, it's never taught at my school, it doesn't talk about it afterwards because it's almost like why we're going to relive it. And there's so much shame that they feel.
Yeah.
And then the behavior continues. So is it that, that was a great question that you had was like, well, I don't know what he doesn't want to talk about it. So then what do I do? And I'm like, we got to stick to like training, working with the parents, working with the teachers on
Right.
language, making sure that, there's coping skills and what they need in the classroom are set up. Um,
Definitely.
and the other thing that drives me nuts, I don't know if this happens with you a lot, but which I get really irritated. I'll be honest, I get irritated with this. Whenever kids start misbehaving, I'm gonna call Vanessa. I'm gonna
Yeah.
call this. And I get it all the time where I'm like the bad person.
Sure.
'Cause-
That
and
like
then,
that they're gonna report all the bad things to you. Yeah.
and then they don't want to see me, right? Because it's like,
Mm-hmm,
oh,
hmm.
she's gonna make me work on myself. Oh, she's gonna make me do something.
Right.
But I want to explain what happens when you do that. When you do that, you are not empowering yourself.
Hmm. Hmm.
There's a level of like, and parents do this to each other.
Right.
Wait till so and so gets home and you're in trouble, even though it
Hmm.
happened with you.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's like it's not very helpful for anyone. Like you said, it's not empowering to the parent that it's happening with, and it's not working for the kid because then they see someone else as like a source of shame, um, rather than a source of trust or a source of like someone they can talk to about it. So yeah, I hear you. I think that's important, um, to yeah, like have those roles, um for the kiddo to feel like all the roles of adults around them are actually supportive, not up like the disciplinary and the punisher, you know.
Right. But I also, I think it's important for parents to see, like, if you say, wait till dad gets home, well, you right there, the child's not going to respect you.
Right, right,
And
right.
it's
Yeah.
damaging the relationship with the other parent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because then it's like, well, I've been gone all day long, or the mom, whatever, whoever. I've been gone all
Right.
day long. I want to come home, and then I have to punish you from something you did at 2 o'clock when it's 7 o'clock.
Sure.
And it's like that right there versus like, okay, finish it by 3, right? So if
Yeah.
this happens at 2, work through it, be done with it, and move on.
Yeah. 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 I think you're
And
right.
and I think that's what the whole thing of taking it personally is like, well, my kid treated me this way. He did that,
Mm-hmm.
they did this, and like they can't do that to me,
Mm.
right? So then you have this like, I'm going to show them, but yet that's not being supportive. That's
Yeah.
like, you're kind of going, or, and that's where it's like working on yourself and working on the fact that like you did it. I mean, I don't know, a kid was flicking me off there the day and I just looked at him and started laughing. I'm like, are you done now?
But yeah, and once again, like you worked really hard on like checking yourself to know it's not personal. And I think, that's important for all the adults in these kids' lives because they can't intervene at all if they're going to take it personal, or like if they're going to feel their own sense of shame, like they're a bad parent or something like that. So, yeah, I think this point is really important that the interventions also need to happen with the adults around a kiddo who's having a tough time.
Right. And I think the other thing is too is understanding that for me, like I have a link, I call them love taps. So when there's a behavior, that's how I change my perspective. Like again, it's perception, right? Like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
always teach kids, like one thing can happen. You got 5 ways of looking at it. Which way do you want to
totally,
look at it, right? Positive,
totally.
negative, meh, whatever. Um,
Hmm.
that's how you do it. But to me, like if we're not having behaviors, then we're not teaching
Hmm.
with some kids because I feel like there is a level of being able to increase frustration tolerance. So behaviors aren't bad.
Hmm. Right,
They're
right.
not. They're not. It's just how we handle it. And I think for me, like I've worked with people, they're like, "Oh, we haven't had a behavior in 2 weeks," and I'm like, "Uh-oh,
Mm.
uh-oh."
Mm.
I'm all, they're either manipulating us.
Yeah.
They're either like not learning, something's going on because there should be something.
Hmm.
And so when you
Hmm.
think of it that way, it changes it versus like, oh my gosh, my kid is acting out like on Wednesday and the last 2 days he didn't do anything.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, and then kids also self-sabotage.
Mm. Say more about that.
Yeah, the self-sabotage of like, um, for example, if you're looking at well, the kids with attachment issues and other stuff,
Yeah.
right? So if you have a kid that doesn't feel like they're worthy or good enough, and then all of a sudden, like for example, I took the kids to the baseball game. And so I
Mm-hmm.
actually called one of the kids because whenever there's something really positive going on, he gets really anxious and excited, and then behaviors happen and things that
Yeah.
come up because he's feeling like he might not deserve it, or it's just too
Yeah.
big of a reward, right? Or not a reward, but like too big of an activity. So I
Hmm.
call in the morning, I go, don't self-sabotage. And he's like, what? I go, whenever anything happens for you, where it's like somebody gifts you something or there's like something nice for you, you become not the nicest kid.
Mm. Hmm. Hmm.
And so I need to point that out. So for them to understand, like, how do we look at his own behavior and what he's doing? And he's
Yeah.
like, okay. He's a little man voice.
That's cool that he got that. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Vanessa.
Yeah. But
Like,
yeah, I mean, that took a lot of you kind of pointing that out before you were able to use the word self-sabotage, right? Like you have seen this behavior, you've talked to him
yeah,
about this behavior, like this is a long term pattern that has allowed you to have that relationship, to be able to then, do, like you said, a short intervention and that worked, so
Yeah.
that's really,
And
yeah.
and then I walk away.
Exactly. Right. You're not going to continue to explain it or, like go back and forth about it, but you're going to like plant the seed out there and hope that something grows.
Well, the other thing is, I was talking to my old supervisor a long time ago, because I used to say, oh, I'm gonna have the kids come up with a consequence, right, for them.
Yeah.
And then she's like, well, what's the intervention in that? Oh, like, oh, they get to think, I don't know, they're gonna come up with something. And she's like, no, she's like, the key thing to that intervention is that you walk away after you do it.
Mm.
And I say, what does that mean? She's like, well, you need them to think.
Yeah.
That's the intervention.
Right.
And when
right.
I heard that, I was like, oh, so I have to make sure that like I have to stop talking. That's why my book is called Shut Up and Parent, because you have all these strategies.
Yeah, that's really
Right?
wise. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
It's hard to do that, to trust ourselves enough to believe that something is getting through and to trust ourselves enough to believe like that this is a process. And
and if you have a kid
easy.
and if you have a kid that doesn't want to talk and you're like, I'm going to give you space, and to be like, okay, are they really thinking about it or are they not thinking about it?
Right.
And then, and sometimes I think we want to talk so much because it makes us feel better that they're hearing things, but talking is too much.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
And they're not. Yeah, exactly. It's sort of sometimes I'm in denial as a therapist that my talking is really getting through. And I know it's not. I mean, that's just reality,
But
it's all
again,
gonna.
even for teachers and for therapists, one day might not be the best session, but the next day it is.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
And that's where it's not personal. And that's what I want to point out, because I think that how you broached the conversation with me, I was like, this isn't a Carrie issue. This is just the kid just going through the issue.
Well, I think that was a really good reminder, and that's again back to like why all of us sometimes need to collaborate with other people who are doing this work, because sometimes we can get caught up in believing whatever it might be, stories about how we should be in control, what we should be teaching, how kids should be acting, so it's important to like have that reality check.
No, 100%. Well, I love working with you.
I love working with you too. We've had a long and fruitful, time just working together. So
On different ideas. So
yeah, it's great to have this conversation with you today.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And until next time, because I know I'm going to have you come back on it.
Thank you. Anytime.
I liked the morning text. Are you there? And I'm all, oh, I got to get.
Saturday morning.
Thank you, Carrie. I appreciate you.
Thank you for listening to Parent Vanessa Kalam. Parenting with Vanessa Kalam.
And if you have any questions about your child or want to hear other tips, please go to Vanessa's website, vanessacalone.com at VANESSAKAHLON.com or email colonefamilyservices@gmail.com.